So I've been playing Jojo's All-Star Battle R. As a big fan of the series and having a quote new Jojo game was exciting. Even though All-Star Battle isn't really new per se, it's just a remaster that we finally have for the West. But anyways, the hype was there to have all these characters to play as, even though I am completely garbage trash at fighting games. So I already knew from the start that the hook was my fanboy love and the competitive side of this game wouldn't click for me, and spoiler, it still hasn't. Aside from all that, how about we get into the game and what I think about it? So I'll start off by saying that I am not a fighting game expert by any stretch, so I am not going to fully grasp the complexity of the systems the game has to offer. So my feelings will reflect my surface level skills. With that, the combat has a system in place on offer called Easy Beat. For me, this is like an auto combo system in Devil May Cry. You can mainly do the inputs for combos for those big brain flashy plays. Or if you're not feeling as spicy, then you can utilize Easy Beat. And all that's needed is pressing the square button to pull off these sick combos. It's an extremely simple system, and it's definitely not tapping into all the skills the characters have, and it's honestly kind of a shame. But it did make me want to learn the manual combos and incorporate other moves into my fighting style. So the incentives are there for those seeking the complexity out, so it's pretty nice. Starting off with All-Star Battle mode. I would call this a story mode, and while that is true, it's not really a great way to experience the story of the franchise. I did enjoy the unique dialogue that's used when certain characters are matched up. It's a great wink if you're familiar with the Jojo lore. Another positive is that the story mode has little challenges, which in all honesty are fairly basic, but they do add some fun to the repetitive battles. This includes things such as either players' attack or defense being increased or decreased, sometimes both, or multiple. Health regen, special gauge refilling, or even certain characters being in a special state for the entire battle. They're fun, but in the end, they don't really add too much to the fights, and they're only available in this mode specifically, which is a huge bummer actually. But another thing about this mode is that it made me play as many characters I would never play with, and it could be my lack of skill depth that holds me back, but man. Characters like Mariah, all the Pillar Men, Pet Shop, and Whole Horse, and there's more. And they're completely awful to play in my opinion. Like, there's nothing wrong with them, it could just be my lack of skill, but none of them were fun to play, and I would really lean into using Easy Beat to play as these characters because I just don't think they're any good. And that's really it for story mode. It's not a great way, as I mentioned earlier, to experience the story. The mechanics are surface level at best, and worst of all is that this is the best single player option the game has. So let's not beat around the bush and cover the other single player modes on the list. We have arcade mode. We only have two options here, so great variety, which is Challenge Battle and Endless Battle. Starting with the former, Challenge isn't what it even sounds like. It's just a series of 8 fights back to back, and you select your CPU difficulty and if you want arena hazards on or not. And you are great on how well you do, but this is all it has to offer. You can't unlock new characters, you can't add modifiers like story mode, nothing like that. And that just makes this mode feel very hollow to me. I played it once for the trophy, obviously, but never touched it again. Next up, we have Endless Battle. This is your survival mode. You select a character and really you fight until you just can't anymore. I mean, you do recover health in between fights based on how quickly you win, but it adds nothing to separate itself from other fighting games in the genre. So once again, we have a very lackluster single player option available. Next up in Versus, and we have 3 modes to pick from here, so one more than the prior. Single, Team Battle, and Tournament Battle. I don't see a point in talking about single player battle since this is a standard fight between a CPU, a friend, or honestly just having 2 CPUs beat each other up. And cool, I guess? We have Team Battle, which lets you pick a team of 3 characters to duke it out with. Granted, each character does get its own support, which is kind of cool, but it's not really any different from single battle, just that you can use more characters at one time without having to back out to character selection every time. And last up to bat, we have tournament mode, and this is just, again, a glorified single player battle just in tournament form. Hey, if you're playing just a single player, you have to wait, you just mash X for the other, battles of the CPUs to fight through, and then, oh, it's your fight, and then rinse and repeat. It's really nothing special. It's at this point, I realize I'm crapping on every option All-Star Battle is offering for single-player content, but in all honesty, it's where the game, to me, fails the most. It doesn't really have any unique or fun modes to offer if you're not into playing online for the glory, which is sad because having all the wackiness of Jojo, I really feel the game could have had some really bizarre modes. I'm sorry for that one. But that covers every mode the game has that's offline, so single player content. So moving on to the online mode, and this is where you're competing for ranks, and where my lack of player skill really shines the brightest. But there still isn't much to cover even in this mode either, since it's still just battles. But now your rank's on the line. But if you prefer to play while not risking your title, then you're able to play online and play your match. So take your pick. Do you play for the glory, or do you play for just good old fun to play online? It's an option. I've glossed over it, but there is a practice mode, which is your last real gameplay centric option on the menu. And while this is a great addition that lets you practice combos, I feel it's missing its version of the dojo from something like Guilty Gear Strive. A mode that gives you missions covering different combo strings or even core mechanics of the game to practice and learn about. I mention this because All-Star Battle has a cancel mechanic that lets you spend a chunk of your special meter to continue a combo string to really give your opponent a serious beatdown. But the game never teaches you this, and I only learned about it by looking online. It would have been amazing to have an option in practice mode that taught you the more intricate mechanics of the game, and for me, this is actually the biggest letdown of all of the modes. Now, our last 2 modes to cover are no longer about battling of any kind, because, everything is just fighting and fighting and fighting. But we have Customize. I personally don't care for this having its own slot on the main menu because it's tied to playing online, and that you can edit your player card and, that represents you online. Although one cool feature here is the edit characters. You earn money from battling and everything else to spend in a shop that you can spend to buy new taunts, victory screens, and honestly, this is a really nice touch because it pulls from the lore of Jojo. So, being a fan of all things Jojo, this little nod at the series made me honestly really happy, especially the more I got to customize my boy Giorno. And finally, we have the shop and gallery. Now, I already mentioned being able to buy things from the shop prior, but it does also offer a model viewer and a sound test, and funnily enough, a Jojo glossary. These are really cool things to look at and experience for the fans, but I personally don't feel like they add much. Despite buying from the shop, I never look through the stuff I buy since it's honestly just flavor. The most important thing to buy from the shop are honestly just the different outfits, the taunts, the victory screens, the things I mentioned prior. Those are worth buying, and luckily those things are actually kind of cheap, so it's nice. In the end, that's Jojo All-Star Battle R, and I can't help but feel underwhelmed by this game. And while the Jojo fan of me loves seeing my golden boy himself, Giorno Giovanna, and other favorites, the game doesn't really do anything unique or special that separates it from other fighting games. So even after spending my time with this one, I walk away feeling like JoJo's Bizarre Adventure had a lot of the JoJo, but it lacked the bizarre and especially the adventure. I don't see a point in talking about single player. I don't see a oh, fuck. I don't see a point in talking about single play. Oh my god, single.